Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Spherical Luminosity's YouTube Live. If you've ever wondered about the power of sacred sites and how they're helping us to accelerate in this time of a massive shift in consciousness, which is hitting the physical realm at this particular time, it's just happened, we're pivoting now, this YouTube Live is for you. So if you could comment in the chat, tell me your first name, where you're from, so I can say hello to some of you. Hello, Cindy Smith from Texas. We have Georgina, who I think is from Portland, Oregon. Hello, Georgina. And we have Maxine, all the way from Christchurch, New Zealand. And I think Pam and Chris are here too from New Zealand. Hello, hello. And hello, Daniela. And Leah and Mauricio is here. We have Fiona from San Miguel in Mexico, and Karen Gardner. So, and we have somebody from India. Hello, I think this is Kulbir. So hello and welcome to all of you who I have not named. Thank you for coming on, for participating, for saying hello. I always love seeing you guys, even though I do not see you in person. My name is Karen Cheong. Many of you know me already and some of you don't. So for those of you who are new, I help to catalyze awakening and a rise in human consciousness by releasing people's conscious and unconscious blocks at what I refer to as frequency level, which helps to amplify, or it just does amplify, your awareness of the divine within, so you can recognize and live the abundance and limitlessness of your true nature as infinite, indestructible consciousness. This is your birthright. And the time for humanity to awaken to this possibility is right now. Like, seriously, the window is now open. It's closing, and it's happening. It's really kind of a remarkable time. So for those of you who are brand new to frequency work and don't know much about it, well, I can only give a very brief overview in this amount of time. So after this, if you want to learn more, I'd really strongly recommend checking out episodes 1 and 2 of Mastering Your Will Through Frequencies, which is right here on this channel. Those 2 episodes are all about the fundamentals of frequency work. There are 2 group frequency calibration meditations after each of those videos, as there are after each episode of Mastering Your Will Through Frequency, so that you could actually do the work, which is where the change happens. Okay, so the talking is helpful, and the frequency work is where the change happens. So there's the also the How It Works section of the website at sphericalluminosity.com. Okay, so today, I was surprised when this topic came in for this YouTube Live, because it's not something that I'm exactly an expert in. Okay, there are many people who are experts at ley lines and sacred sites and all that good stuff, but it came in during meditation. It was very clear, and as many of you have heard me say, I follow what shows up. Okay, especially when it's at this level of clarity. So, just to give a bit of context, I'm just going to back up a little bit. So many of you who've been watching this channel or joined me for these YouTube live sessions know that I've been saying that consciousness is rising. Yes, we're at this moment in time where consciousness is rising at an unprecedented rate. And that as we clarify ourselves by releasing our distortion patterns and rising in frequency resonance as a result of releasing those distortion patterns, we not only accelerate our own awakening, but the frequency resonance that you are, okay, without doing anything, just by being you, ripples out and affects the people you care about, your community, humanity, and human consciousness. Okay? And we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about how that works today. But I just wanted to give you that context. So one piece that I have not talked about very much at all yet is that the Earth herself is helping us. So the Earth holds multiple levels of consciousness. So you may think that this is only this level of consciousness. That's not true. What gives you access to the levels of consciousness and what your experience is depends on your own frequency resonance. So a lot of people think that this is the only consciousness level on the Earth because the resonance isn't high enough to access higher ones. Okay, so that's not a judgment. It just is. It's very simple. It's just like, are you high enough in resonance to access something higher or not? Really. The higher your own frequency resonance, like I said, the higher the levels of consciousness you can access, maintain, experience, and live from. Okay, so the Earth has a consciousness of her own. It's a powerful one. And she is facilitating the movement of beings from one consciousness level to another. So, backing up again for more context. Many of you have heard my explanation of how we create our realities, how we render. So, what does this mean? This is back to the episode 97, the very famous Mastering Your World of Frequencies. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I definitely recommend that you listen to this. Okay? So how do we render? How do we create the reality? Just super bottom line, very simple. Okay? So you have a sphere around you at arm's length that is etheric, meaning it's not visible, but it's very there. And it's made of light. And that spirit body projects or renders the physicalness that is you in the center. Okay? Your brain is the physical mechanism through which the projection happens. Right? It's what gives you all the input, gives you the idea of like your physical body, what you see, the reality around you, your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts, all that stuff. Yes? So all of how the rendering works is, like I said, in episode 97. And if you want to go deeper into that, we do talk about the rendering, how the illusion works in relationship to you, how to have more mastery within and over the illusion, in the relationship with the 1, 2.0, and also 1.0 programs, and also in the Mastery Momentum programs. Okay, so if you want to have more depth of knowledge of the nuts and bolts, let's just say, of how you create your reality, those would be some good programs for you to investigate. Or you can watch, like I said, episode 97, which is free. Okay, so the earth helps us render our physicalness, okay, so that we can interface with the rest of nature and function on the earth in this physical form, okay? So that consciousness is interplaying with your spirit body in the rendering that's you. It helps, that consciousness of the earth helps to give you form, okay? So it makes sense then that the earth is an important player, or the consciousness of the earth is an important player in the shift of consciousness that we're experiencing in greater and greater numbers. Okay, so which brings us now to sacred sites and their function at frequency level at this time. All right, so like I said, this is a huge topic, right? It's a massive topic. And this is my perspective. We might go deeper into this because, you know, we have an hour together, or approximately that right now, if there's interest in it. However, this is sort of like a global overview at this time, okay, based on what I'm receiving. Okay, so one thing I wanted to share is, like I said, the function of sacred sites from a frequency perspective, okay, and what has been revealed to me. And again, as I've always said, and many of you have heard me say before, what is revealed to me is based on my own frequency resonance. So of course, as that rises, as at the rate that it does, what I access or what is known to me increases, right? It's just like higher levels of frequency resonance give you access to higher levels of consciousness, awareness, different realities. It also gives you access to different levels of information. Okay? Yeah, that's why different people get different stuff out of my GFCs or the events or whatever, because they're all given at different levels of consciousness, and where it's going to meet you where you are, so that you can accelerate at the rate that is best for you. Okay, the more fear you have, the more you get in your own way, the slower the work is. Okay, so anyway, so I was in meditation, I don't know, some number of years ago, and what became apparent to me is that there are grids around the earth of light. Okay, these grids are different in frequency resonance. Okay, so they all vibrate at a different rate. They're not all the same. Okay. The nodes of those grids are different things. Okay, so they're, like I said, this is a very earth thing that I was seeing. These grids around the earth. Okay, like I said, the nodes of the grids were interesting to me because in the meditation, some of them are very, very, very bright, and some of them were just there, like present, not very active. Okay. And some of them were dimming. So it was interactive. It wasn't like it was static. Okay. It was moving. Okay. It was moving, meaning some nodes were getting much, 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 much brighter. Some were dimming. Some were stagnant. Some were whatever. Okay. They were doing different things. Okay. So I knew, okay, because when I'm in these states, it's not like I'm thinking at all. Okay. There's no room for my mind in these states because it's too low of a frequency resonance. Okay? So what I became aware of, or knew, whatever you want to call it, was that the nodes in the grids often were places on the earth, okay, where certain, like I said, those grids were intersecting and they formed places of power, let's just say, okay. And in those specific places, a lot of the ancients knew about these grids and would place structures on those grids to amplify them. So when in this meditation, I knew that the nodes of the grids were sacred sites. And I also became aware that, oh my God, some of the nodes on a separate set of grids were people. They kind of overlay each other to some degree. So the sacred sites, like I said, are these nodes. Oftentimes, like I said, the ancients built on these nodes either to capture the power of this intersection for themselves or to amplify it for the good of all. The sacred sites exist in the present moment of linear time on the Earth's surface. Okay. As you rise in frequency resonance and as you clarify and as you start to live more in the present moment and to live in your brilliance, are a node that starts to become brighter. And it starts to influence the rest of the grid and the rest of the nodes. You may not be aware of what nodes that you influence or how much of the grid you influence, but you influence them. The brighter and clearer your frequency resonance becomes. So, the more in the present moment you are, the more that expansive, infinite, abundant brilliance of spirit level opens to you. Okay, which is what we're going to be exploring and moving into more in the San Miguel de Allende retreat that we're giving this October. When that happens, you start to bring in higher levels of frequency, just like the sacred sites. Okay, so you as a node have a choice as to whether or not you're going to get brighter. It's a choice. Okay, so just backing up to something I've said before, everyone awakens at their own time. Okay, you can't force someone else to awaken. It's their agreement with higher self, pure source, right? You can't force someone into it. And when that awakening happens, we have lots of choices. And when we choose to accelerate our awakening, to increase our frequency resonance, that node can get much brighter. Okay. So now, at this time, the sacred sites a number of them are activating to bring more of that higher level frequency in to power the grid. Make sense? To light up more of the grid. So that's why we're talking about this today and why we're going to be doing a very important group frequency calibration meditation at the end to have you become more sensitive to those sites, okay, so that you can use them to accelerate yourself if you happen to be in one. So I'm going to answer just a few questions in like a sort of question answer format. So it's helpful. Then I will take questions and then we'll go into the GFC. Okay. So it's a little bit different format than what I usually give for YouTube Live. So I just wanted to let you know that. So one of the questions that I'm going to answer is, are all known sites powerful? You know, because like, for example, there's like the famous site of Stonehenge. There are the pyramids in Egypt. There are, there are like the vortices in Sedona, right? There's a lot of these places that are powerful that have been talked about in history. People have made pilgrimages to them in different ways, all that sort of stuff. And the question is, are all known sacred sites powerful? They're not. A lot of the ones that are known actually have become dormant or gone to sleep or have become polluted by too many people in them. Because what happens is when you have a lot of people going to these places that are of a lower frequency resonance, and you have a lot of people going, right? Like say Sedona, for example, right? Now you have like literally like thousands and thousands and thousands of people going to Sedona, yes? And to go see the vortices and be on the Red Rock. It's a beautiful place. Okay, so don't get me wrong. Sedona is an incredible, amazing, powerful place. It's been a place where there's been a massive transformation for myself. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that Sedona isn't a powerful place. And it's wobbling a bit right now because there's so many people who are going there of a lower, denser frequency who are like dumping their distortion patterns into those spaces. A lot of those vortices are becoming polluted. Okay. And they're not intentionally doing it. It's not like people are like, well, I'm going to go to this sacred site and dump my distortion patterns. That's not necessarily what they're thinking. They either think they're going to be healed, or they think they want to go, I don't know, just experience something new that they heard about that sounds cool, or whatever. Okay. But they come with their distortion patterns and like dump. All right. And now if you've ever had anyone dump their distortion patterns on you, you know that it doesn't feel very good to you. Feels bad, especially if you're not holding your space or you're not strong enough yet, whatever. It feels bad. Well, imagine thousands of people doing that in a space. Now, of course, these spaces can handle a certain level of resonance. Obviously, they're powerful places. But at a certain point, it starts to get a little wobbly. Okay? Some places like, for example, like Stonehenge has gone dormant. Okay? They just have stopped. So just to be really clear, the sacred sites have provided different functions through different points in time. Some of them are active at certain times to hold the frequency resonance of a certain consciousness level at that time. And they are no longer serving that function as other sites become powerful. So it doesn't mean that a sacred site needs to be known to be powerful. Does that make sense? Okay, so a lot of sacred sites that are very active right now are not known. Okay? And they're powerful because people aren't traipsing all over them. Okay, so some sacred sites that are powerful that are less known, for example, are like Tolontongo, which we're going to in Mexico when we do our San Miguel de Allende retreat. That is a sacred site that most people aren't actually aware of. The people who go there don't realize that it's a sacred site. It's really fascinating to me. And it is one. So that's really a very cool place. Some sites that have been known to be places of power or sacred sites are still powerful, like Mount Shasta is one of them, right? Incredibly powerful place, more remote, still very powerful. Make sense? So it kind of depends. So just because a sacred site is known, it does not mean that it's active, nor does it mean it's powerful. All right. So the next question is, do they all serve the same purpose? No, they don't. They're different, right? It's like kind of like saying, I don't know, are people all the same? Are their functions the same? No, they're different. So some of them, I guess what I'll say is that they have a general purpose that's the same, okay, which is to amplify a higher frequency resonance at pivotal points in time. Okay, so that's generally what it is. Are they, some of them, sorry, I didn't complete that thought. Some of them are dormant and are meant to become active. Some of them are, so I'll just give you a story. I think it's going to be easier for me to tell a story than to try to explain it. Okay, so this is not something that I talk about very much. But one of the functions that Chris and I serve is that we get called to certain places to basically activate them. Okay, so that they're, because a lot of times I've noticed in the work that we've done, it's very private. It's not like we announce it. We don't go with groups. It's very quiet. Okay. We go to places to either clear the field of something that's been heavy and interfering with the function of that particular space. So, for example, when we went to Canyon de Chelly, if you guys know of Spider Rock, it's a very powerful place. It's a very powerful portal. And in that place, there has been a lot of death and also genocide, basically. And so, what we were called there for was to release that field of death, basically, so that that space could operate at the higher level of frequency that was required for it to be, to hold this level of consciousness, makes sense? To have it function the way it's supposed to help it do what it's supposed to. Okay. Or, it's funny. Chris is usually the one who gets the knowingness of where we're going to go. He's just like, we need to go here. And I'm say, okay. And then off we go we don't know why. We just end up going there. It's kind of funny. So another place would be, for example, we were in Scotland in, I think it was the Isle of Man. Lewis and Harris. Okay, Lewis and Harris. I'm sorry, I don't remember the names very well. And there were old stone circles in those places that have been asleep for a very, very long time. And we were there. I mean, they're tourist sites, right? That's what some people go up there and to like look at them, but they weren't very active. And what we were called there to do was to activate them again. Okay, they each of these places have a very specific resonance from a very specific higher level dimensional order, and I often will function as a bridge between a higher dimensional order and this earth plane or this consciousness. I don't know why I do that. I just do. And so we were there to activate that. And it's kind of like a weird thing, especially at that time, because, it's kind of like, you go to this place, it's a little weird, like everyone's tourists and they're taking pictures and whatnot. And we're just quietly waiting for the moment to happen. And it happens every time that it's like really, really busy with tourists taking pictures and like all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden everyone disappears and then we do our work. It's fascinating to me. It happens every time. And as soon as we're done, all of a sudden, all these people come in who weren't there before. And you're just like, where'd all these people come from? It's so weird, It's like they all went for tea and then they came in. So it doesn't take very long, but that's what happens. We have done, we were clarifying a field in Mount Shasta, which had become very polluted, actually. And it was amazing. We were very lucky in that particular time because we had brought over a number of elders who were Maori and Samoan and so on, and who were very powerful beings. And we did ceremony and a bunch of work there to clarify Shasta. I'm not saying it's not a powerful place. It is. And we were there to clarify it. And when we were done, what was amazing was when we all looked up from having done what we did, there was a rainbow around the sun, a circular rainbow around the sun. It's really amazing. It's sort of like, good job, guys. You know what I mean? So it was really lovely. So, like I said, some of these places are portals. Some of these places are here to hold a higher degree of resonance with a higher dimensional order. Some of these places are earth frequencies that are amplifying so that we can benefit even more from them, that type of thing. So they're not all the same. They kind of overlap. Does that make sense? So some of them are more general and some of them are more specific. All right. The other question we have here is, can they change? So yes, they can. So meaning that, like I mentioned before, some of them have gone dormant. It's places of power that were extraordinarily in their heyday and at the time that they were needed for what they were needed for, they were extraordinarily powerful. Or places like the pyramids in the Yucatan, for example, when ceremonies done or certain things happened, they became places of power. And then whatever there was that they were amplifying and how they were helping was no longer needed, and they shifted and became dormant. Does that make sense? They serve certain functions. So some of them can become active, right? So like I said, part of what we do is to activate certain places. I don't know how Chris knows where we're going. We don't necessarily know beforehand where we're going. It's kind of, we just kind of get guided there, and then magic happens. We don't think, we just follow, really. If we think too much, it kind of messes things up. Okay, so another question is, how does one know which places are helpful and beneficial? And are there places that can be bad or harmful? Okay, so there are sites that can be more polluted. Okay, so for example, there are certain vortices in the Sedona area where like a friend took me to some of them to see them. And as soon as I came within the field of the field of one particular vortex that was very powerful, I immediately held my space and backed up out of it because it was very polluted. Okay, very, very polluted. So for me, I didn't, because I was thinking, right, in my brain that it would be, vortices, it would be good. It's Sedona. I've been here many times before, meaning in Sedona generally. It's been a place of power, acceleration, past lives for me, etc. Okay, it's a very wonderful place. So I went in assuming this, okay, with my brain, as opposed to just being present without expectation. And as I approached the vortex, I started to feel not great. Like I actually started to feel a little bit sick. So that's exactly when I held my space, because I was like, whoa, 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 what's happening here? Right. So in that way, if you're in a place where there's been more pollution and especially if it's something like a vortex, which is amplifying the pollution, that's not great. Okay. So if somebody's very dense and of a lower resonance, they probably won't even know it's happening to them. Okay. For you, if you're a higher resonance and you're in that place, you would probably you would start to probably feel not well, or start to feel like, no, I don't want to go there. Or you would feel uncomfortable or unsettled, or you see what I'm saying? Now, whether you listen to those intuitions or feelings is something else entirely, but you'll be getting little or strong hints that it's not really good for you to be there. Okay. So now, is it harmful? It's going to pull your resonance down. Is that not great? Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly harmful in the sense of like causing you physical harm, but to me, when you have a drop in your frequency resonance, that is not good, because then of course it's dragging your resonance down, and that impacts very much what it is that you're creating in that moment, right? So I guess the next thing is, did I answer the question about are they all beneficial? I don't know if that was a question. Yeah. So yeah. So I think it's really important to, Chris is just mentioning to me, and I think this is a good point, that when you're in a sacred site, we can have expectation, right? Because we've heard from all the people or the internet or whatever that it's a sacred site and we need to be very aware, it's like this wonderful place where all this is going to happen. It's very important when you're approaching a sacred site or anything that you be aware of your expectation and come more into your 0 point. Okay, so to release your expectation, to be like, okay, I understand that I have this expectation. I really would like to have a wild, cool, mystical experience. Everyone says I'm going to have it. Notice that if you have that, okay, and it's best to notice that and then to hold your space. Okay, even if you have an expectation of what you think you're going to receive, okay, because you don't know what it is yet. So I'm not telling you to be defended. I'm telling you to be aware of your own frequency resonance and how you're feeling in that moment. So that in that moment, as you experience whatever you experience, whether it's amazing or like weird, slightly off, you can respond appropriately without, trying to be like, well, maybe it's okay. Maybe that's, I was expecting it to be amazing, right? And you're not softening it. You're just in the moment of whatever you're experiencing, and then you can respond appropriately. Okay? To access the power of sacred sites. So here's where we get to the well, what do I do if I want to access the sacred sites to accelerate in my frequency resonance? Okay. To gain the most out of being physically in a space like this, okay, the higher your frequency resonance, the more you're in your heart space, not in your head, not in expectation, the more you're in coherence. Okay, and this is why we teach coherence mastery. the more, I mean, not the only reason, obviously, but it's one of the benefits, the more in the present moment you can be, or in the 0 point that I've mentioned. And if you don't know what the 0 point is, I do recommend that you watch episode 151. That will explain to you all what the 0 point is. It's quite technical, actually, but it's very thorough. And the better able you are to feel and experience your brilliance, the better you can benefit from the special resonance of sacred sites. Like I said, they all resonate at different levels. They're not all in the same grid lines. They all don't have the same purpose. They all have their own little gifts, just like you. You have your own gifts, okay? Your own beauty, your own messiness, your own whatever it is. But you have your own gifts. So the sacred sites are the same. So it's not why I created the Living Your Brilliance series, but when people are doing the Living Your Brilliance series, we're dropping further into the 0 point, and we can become aware of, entrain, and clarify the brilliance that's us. If you are in that state in a sacred site, like Tonle or Mount Shasta or the Dead Sea or the Black Rock Desert, you can be accelerated more on spirit level. So it's kind of like this. I don't know if you remember those merry-go-round. Okay, so, I'm probably dating myself, but, this is the 70s. I was a kid who grew up in the 70s, right? So in the 70s in playgrounds in Canada, there would be these metal merry-go-rounds that you used to push. Okay, when you were kids, like you'd run and push the little merry-go-round and it would like creak to a start and then you'd get faster as you pushed it. And then what you would do is you would jump onto it and then you'd spin for a while and then you have to hop off and then like run around some more to get it to spin faster and then you hop on. Yeah? All right. So if you can imagine a sacred site kind of like spinning very fast. So it's a merry-go-round that's spinning very fast. If you're running next to it, okay, at your own speed, okay, so you're like running next to it, it's easier for you to grab it and to jump onto the merry-go-round. But if you're standing stock still, okay, you're not moving at all, and you try to get onto a merry-go-round that's spinning super fast, at that speed, you're probably just going to be thrown off or hurt your arms or something, right? Like maybe like wipe out. Okay. So it's like your resonance. Okay. So the sacred site's spinning at a certain frequency resonance, right? Just like the merry-go-round. If you're running next to it, the more your frequency resonance dictates the speed at which you can run. Okay. My little metaphor. Higher frequency resonance, the faster you are able to run around with the merry-go-round. Okay, that means that you can jump onto the merry-go-round more easily. If, however, your frequency resonance is low, you're asleep, it's like you're standing still and you're like trying to grab onto the merry-go-round, it's going to hurt you. Or the other thing that happens is it's moving so fast you don't even see it. Because to the people who are asleep, and there's still things spinning. It's moving so fast, they're not even sure that it's there. Okay? So you can see the physicalness of it, but you won't be able to access the frequency resonance, the magic, that special acceleration that can happen from a sacred site. Does that make sense? So that's why right now, it's starting to shift. Okay, like you guys have been hearing me talk about a window, and this is not to scare you, all right? I mean, that's not my gig. I don't put people in fear. That's not why I'm telling you this. We're at this moment where consciousness is rising. There's a window in which it's accelerating even more. We are in that window. That window is not going to last forever. So just to be really clear, it's not like if you miss the window, you're never going to awaken. You're just going to miss the acceleration part. Does that make sense? Right? So you're going to awaken maybe this lifetime, maybe next life, whatever, right? But it's now happens to be a time where it's like super accelerated. And if you can run faster by clearing your distortion patterns and rising in your frequency resonance, you can take advantage of these little merry-go-rounds that are, spinning you up, and then that will allow you to run even faster. Okay? So, and it's really started to pivot. Like about a week ago, it changed. Okay, things are happening faster. It's happening in the physical realm more. Okay, now. So in any case, it's shifted. And I'm going to go to questions in a minute. But I just want to mention that when you go into a sacred site, it's really important, like I said, to be present, to be aware of your own brilliance, to sit in your heart space. And the more you are like this, the more you can benefit from being in those sacred sites. Some of you who are very sensitive will feel them, okay? And it will amplify the resonance of those sacred sites even more. Now, for those of you who aren't very sensitive, you're like, if only I could feel something, that would be really helpful. All right. Please know, this has nothing to do with your feeling sense. If you are a higher degree of resonance and you put yourself in a sacred site, which is accelerating and beneficial, your frequency resonance will rise. Okay, you don't even know it. You're just like, yep, everyone seems to be having a grand old time. Me, nothing happening. You're not aware of something happening, but it's happening. Okay, so for those of you guys out there who are not feelers, who are just like, you know, everyone keeps talking about these places, I have no experience there, that's okay. It's not required. Just like when you do frequency work, if you don't feel anything, does it matter? Not really. Okay? It's not about necessarily what you feel. Now, some of you feel a lot, and that's great, but it's not required for the frequency to be rising. Yes? All right. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to take some questions, and then more importantly, I'm going to go into the GFC so that when you guys go to certain sacred sites, that you can benefit from what they're here to help us with at this time. Hang on. Question. Can I have a question, please? Yeah, sure. Okay, so if you have an affinity with a sacred site, can this be a past life remembering? It's a good question. Is there benefit with connecting to these places, and can it be done even when not being there physically? Okay, so yes, definitely. So to the first question, if you have an affinity with a sacred site, yes, you can have very strong past life rememberings. So for example, for me, when we went to this very special place in Ireland called Uisneach, I don't know if I said that right, wrong, sorry for all of you Celts. Anyway, when we went there, we were very strongly called to that place. And when I was there, crazy, all these like past life remembrances happened. I've always been drawn to Mount Shasta, even though I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, as soon as I became aware of it, I was like, oh, I love that place. I don't know why. Yeah. So often you have a past life there, or a memory of that resonance in some way, often through your past lives. So yes, that can very, very much be a past life remembering, especially if you were somebody who did ceremony there or were a spiritual type person there who connected more with that space in order to accelerate yourself, then yes, for sure, that is definitely very possible, and for you it is. And is there a benefit with connecting to these places, and can it be done even when not being there physically? Yes. So first of all, it can be, especially if you're a feeler type person, and you have that sensitivity to you, it can be a little overwhelming, to be perfectly honest, when you're physically there. Because what can happen is in some of these places, if they're really powerful, like they are in Uisneach, you can start to really rise in your frequency resonance and start to be aware of all your past lifetimes, because you start to perceive time from the eternal now. Okay, as opposed to linear time. So all of a sudden now you can access a lot of information, be aware of you at different space-time resonances in different lives. Okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I would recommend the episode on what are past lives, I think, or something like this. There's a whole episode on past lives and how they work. Okay, so in any case, for you, Pam, if you connect to those spaces physically, it can be quite a lot, because you start to experience all those different experiences, okay, as your frequency jumps from being in that place. Can you connect to it without being there physically? Yes, absolutely. You absolutely can, if you're at a certain frequency resonance, okay? It's not the same for everybody. So even if you want to, okay, if you have the intention to, and you really want to, and you really know you love that place, but your frequency resonance is too low, it's harder to access that special level of frequencies that those sacred, or let's say the fullness, okay, of the acceleration that those spaces can give you. Make sense? Because you can only access the lower part of the bandwidth of that frequency of that sacred site, right? Makes sense? So that means you can only get a certain amount of benefit. If, however, you're rising in terms of your frequency resonance, what's available to you in terms of the acceleration potential of that place gets exponentially larger. So hopefully that helps. All right. I'm waiting for Chris to, okay. Is it possible to become a bright node and link with the sacred site as a node, as a group, and amplify the work? Yes, it is. That's exactly what we're going to be doing when we're in Tonga, actually. When we're there in October. For those of you who are going to make us, it's going to make it there with us. And yeah, it can be really powerful, man. Whoo, when you have yourself being clarified, you physically come proximate to other people who are masterminding with you, who are also of a certain order of frequency resonance. And please note, this is not better than, okay? This is just simply, you've done the work to increase your frequency resonance, okay? So there's no judgment around it. It's either higher enough that that's happening or not. And then you connect to the sacred site. Now you have this incredibly powerful mastermind. You have yourself, you have your own connection to source, your higher self. Then you're connecting the mastermind of all these people who are already clarified, right? So now the mastermind's spinning up in terms of its momentum. And then you add to it the power of this node, okay, that we call the sacred site. Boom, right? It's just like a massive expansion, okay, in your own frequency resonance. Okay? And chances are, if you're together in a group like that, in a space like that, it's not an accident. You're meant to have that acceleration. Okay? So it's an incredible gift to be able to experience something like that. And you are gifting that space that too, because you are bringing you there. Okay? So that it's not like the space is like, okay, come on, high resonance people, come to me. Okay? So it's not like a yearning like that from a human perspective. They do, however, call, and I don't mean this like it sounds scary, it's not, but they have their own frequency resonance, which attracts things that have a higher order to it. Some of them function as accelerators. So they will draw beings to it that are ready to accelerate. Okay, so anyway, they can be really special. And as Fiona's mentioned down here, it can be extremely accelerating. And it's really spectacular when all those pieces come together. It's like magic, crazy. And we experienced that to some degree when we did the Hawaii retreat a couple of years ago. And we were out with the whales and in this special place in the water. That was spectacular. So anyway, exciting stuff. So let's see, is there another question? Chris is going to put John and then Daniela. Okay. So will we be kept in a certain place on the planet in our lives to help facilitate the grid? Even if I try moving, I end up back in the Midwest. Ah, that's interesting. It depends. Okay, it depends on who you are. So some people are, yes. So to answer your question, it's yes, and it depends. Okay, so there's often more than one answer. So there are people like yourself who are meant to seed a certain level of consciousness in a certain place. Okay, just because you're a node that's mobile. I mean, physically mobile, right? So you can move around. And the frequency resonance that is you is meant to light up the people in a certain area. Okay, so that's why in part you get pulled back there. The other reason that for you specifically, sorry, I'm just scanning you as I'm talking, which can be hard sometimes. But for you particularly, also you need to resolve, you have a couple of past lifetimes that you need to resolve in that place, which pull you back there. Okay, so meaning you have some, like a couple of past lives where you had certain deaths in that space that are not resolved. You just need to resolve them to release that part of the coming back to the Midwest, okay? And you're also there to elevate that a certain level of frequency resonance. Make sense? It's not like it's one or the other, it's kind of both. So hopefully it's helpful. So for some people, they're there, like I said to John, to do a certain thing. And sometimes you can't leave a certain space because you have things that are not resolved that you need to resolve between the land and you. Okay, be it a past lifetime thing or whatever. But that stuff is easy to, well, not easy to clear. I mean, it can be cleared. I think it's easy to clear if you can do a certain level of work, and it's not doesn't take very long to clear. Is my point. So sometimes for people, not you. I'm talking just generally. I've seen people where they try to leave a certain place and they can't because of those past lifetimes, or they have like dead, like a long lineage of being in a certain place, and because there's so many dead in that place, it's like they're not allowed to leave, because if they do, they're like not safe, and the dead can't keep them safe. I know it sounds weird, but if you just resolve that with the dead, then and release the dead, push them out of your field, now all of a sudden the person can leave that space. Make sense? So there's many reasons why you might not be able to leave a space, but what you're suggesting is some of them. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Okay, ready? If we have this knowing, I need to be in this place, and we get synchronistic message of wanting to be and meditate in the place, is this helping clear and activate the site? Well, yes, it's kind of like if you, so first of all, I'm going to back up. So what I would say is it depends. This is not for you, Patricia, okay? Just generally speaking. It depends on the level of frequency resonance that you are. Okay, so some people have these feelings because they want to help in some way, and they have an ego attachment to helping in some way. Okay, so if that's the case, then I would suggest that you clarify yourself even more and ask yourself why it is you want to go. If, however, you're at a certain frequency resonance, Patricia, you are at a certain frequency resonance, where you're going not because you're like particularly trying to get anything out of it. Okay, you just keep getting all these messages and you're like, okay, it's like Chris, right? He doesn't necessarily, he's not like wandering around being like, well, gee, where am I guess we should go to a sacred site soonish. Where do we think that's going to be? He's not thinking about it that way, just like you're not, right? So if you're getting messages in a pull to a certain place and you don't bloody know why, and you just know it has to be sometime in the middle of August or sometime in the end of the fall or whatever it is, okay, and you go there, that performs a couple of functions, okay? So one, for you, it's personally, meaning the person who's following the intuition, it's helping to you come further into your power because you've followed your own calling. Does that make sense? You're following your own intuition, your knowingness, what you know is true for you. So part of it is to affirm your own power. Okay. And please know that when I say power, to those of you who are new and don't know me very well, I don't mean power in the old paradigm way of power, which is like power to gain for oneself, to have power over someone else. I don't mean it like this. I mean power in terms of your clarity of your connection to source. Okay. And how high your frequency resonance is. That's what I mean by power. All right. So please know power can be used, and the word power can mean different things. So that's what I mean in this particular case. So it is affirming your connection, okay, to pure source. So your part of you is going for this, okay, to be in the flow of things, to be more in like service to the one, right? So that's what you're doing by going to the place. In part, it's sort of like, it's funny. They're not static. They're not like because they're not animate in the way that we are, we think they're not like a thing. Does that make sense? They're just like, a place that we go to and we sit in, whatever. They have their own consciousness. Okay, they have their own functions. So it's almost like you get to mastermind with it. Make sense? So for that place, it's actually, especially if you get to a certain level of order, both are benefiting, because this is the new paradigm of new consciousness, right? You're going for what I mentioned. The place is calling you to it, so that you can mastermind together in this place. Okay, perhaps you are clarifying it to some degree. Perhaps it's also accelerating you. Does that make sense? It's not one or the other. It's often both. Make sense? But my point is, when you get to a certain level of resonance and the site is at a certain level of resonance, now everybody's winning when you come together in that place following your intuition. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not just about you. It's not just about the site. I'm not saying that you're thinking that, Patricia, but you know what I mean? It's not just about you or the site. It's actually both of you are accelerating because you're now masterminding together. I know it seems weird to think of a mastermind with like something that's just a space, but that's what you're doing. You're masterminding with it, if that makes sense. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. It's awesome. All right, one more question and then I'm gonna like hop into the GFC. Okay, are there sacred places also in the religious centers like the Vatican, Westminster Abbey, or the Mount of Athos? Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm just feeling into how I'm going to answer this. So those places, especially the Vatican and Westminster Abbey, even Mount Athos to some degree, less so, but still to some degree, are sacred sites. Okay, so they are places of power. They have built on top of them constructs of dominion, of oppression. It's no accident that those structures were built there. And as I had mentioned before, the places are constructed on top of sacred sites for a couple of reasons, right? One, to amplify the power, to gain it for self. Okay, I mean, not myself, but like the self, the person, the people who are trying to control that site. And the other is to amplify for the good of all, okay, to amplify the power of that site. So in these particular places, and it happens a lot, actually. It's interesting where churches are built. They're very accurately built, often, to pull power from like these places, these nodes where they have more amplified frequencies, higher levels of frequencies, and they're using that actually for their own personal gain. Their own, not personal, but you know, the order or the religion or the fill in the blanks, personal, not personal, but you know, gain. Power in the old sense of power, okay? So I talked about two senses of power, right? One is connection to source, etc., in your frequency resonance. And the other is to have power to dominate another, okay, or oppress another. So unfortunately, in those places, there has been a distortion here, and they have been used for power in the old paradigm, not high resonating sense of the word. Okay, so those are not the only instances of that, obviously, but that is the case in those places that you're asking about. Mount of Athos, less so, much less so than the first two, but still to some degree. Okay, so yeah, that's to answer your question. Okay, all right. Okay, so. Okay, we are going to go to the GFC. I hope those answers helped. And okay, so we'll just answer one more. Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to answer this Yvonne question. What's the difference between the portal and the sacred site? Can portals be changed? So a portal is, from my experience of portals, okay, this is my perspective of them, is they are like a shortcut, basically, from one thing to another. So one space-time resonance to another space-time resonance. Okay, whether it's a space-time resonance or dimensional jump really depends on what the portal is, but generally it's from one space-time resonance to another. Or, like I said, into, and this can be not just bound to the Earth. It can be portals to different star systems. It can be portals into different dimensional orders, etc. Okay, your ability to access the portal, again, depends on how high your frequency resonance is. So if you're kind of like a person who is, I'm not saying this is for you, Yvonne, obviously, but just as an example, if you are a person who isn't very sensitive and you're just there as a tourist, right? You go to the sacred site where the portal is and you take pictures of it, like all you would see are the rocks and the trees and the whatever and the whatnot, right? And you would just be like, oh, pretty picture, click, done, right? Now you can post it on Instagram and there's your selfie with you and the portal site, okay? However, If you are of a higher frequency resonance, and if you sit quietly in that space, and it's sometimes they're active in some parts of the year on certain days and not on others. Sometimes it's at night, sometimes it's not. You kind of have to, you'll be called there. Okay. If you're meant to be there at a time when it's active, then it will open for you when you'll be there when it's supposed to happen. So in any case, some of them are open all the time. It just sort of depends. In any case, so then you can project your consciousness into different space-time dimensions and receive certain things or have different experiences, that type of thing. Okay, so that is what portals do. They also, yeah, so they're different from sacred sites to me. Sacred sites are more, this is like splitting hairs to be totally honest, but like to me, sacred sites are more about the earth in some ways, you know, like the actual resonance of the earth and the intersection of the grid lines on the earth to create these nodes of amplified frequency. Okay. A portal, it's not that they can be changed. They can be, well, depends who it is and what the portal is. They can be closed. Again, depending on the portal, depending on the person who is trying to close the portal and for what purpose, portals can be closed. Yeah. So it kind of depends. It's sort of a very big question that you're asking. Okay. Okay. So I think, yeah, we're good. All right. So now I'm going to move into the GSE. I hope that was helpful and interesting to you. Sacred sites are very powerful places. They're amazing. If you have the gift of being in one at a higher level of resonance, really, I find them to be very special. And for me, you know, the acceleration that can happen in those places are really like a lovely, beautifully wrapped gift. So what we're going to be doing today in the group frequency calibration meditation is that we will be attuning you, okay, so that your frequency resonance is higher, so that when you go into these spaces, that you can be more specifically in that 0 point without the expectation of anything. When we expect stuff, man, like that 100% certain fail. If you expect something to happen, or you expect a certain site, something to happen because you're in that site, like you're expecting the site to perform for you, okay, yeah, instant, not good. Okay, like really just shut down magic. Okay, so the more that you can be in your heart space, the more you can just be in the moment without the expectation, the more accelerating these places will be. So that's what we're going to help with today. And also for some of you, I mean, you can be placed in places where they're not exactly sacred sites, but the frequency resonance is higher. And you're like, get to a place. So maybe like, for example, you run in the woods. Okay, let's just imagine. Okay, this is just an example. You're running in the woods and you run onto a different path that you normally run in. And you get to a place and you're like, whoa, different here. In a good way. You're just like, what's this? I've never felt this before. It feels really good to me. And you stop. Okay. And you just are in that space and you know, because you haven't been thinking, you were just like running along and here you were, and then you stopped. Okay. And if you can come into this place of stillness, even if it isn't a sacred site, it's just a place where there's like more of that sort of higher field of frequency, because these can exist not at the same potency of like a sacred site, let's just say, but you can benefit from them. That's what I'm talking about, right? So like I said, it doesn't have to be, the sacred sites are amazing because they're very amplified in terms of the resonance that they are, because they are in those nodes. Make sense? But sometimes in these lesser nodes, the ones that aren't as, you know, dramatic, let's just say, they exist, right? And you can start to feel them. Alrighty? So hopefully that helps. Here we go. Hopefully I didn't just muddy the water there. Okay, here we go. Let's rise together. Settling in. Becoming very aware of your body, please. So if you're newer, what I recommend is to notice what your skin is touching, the weightedness of your body as you sink into whatever is supporting you. For those of you more experienced, noticing things like what your breath is doing and becoming aware of something more specific, like the space between your toes. Good. Starting to pull us more into the 0 point of space and time. And on your next inhale, bringing your breath, attention, focus, awareness into that left hip. And as you become aware of the left hip, just becoming aware of the curve of this structure. It's not a perfect curve, but it's a curve. And then whenever your next inhale becomes available to you, dropping your breath, attention, focus, awareness into your left heel. Noticing the fleshiness of your left heel. The wrap and the stretch of the skin. Over your heel. And becoming very aware of the center of your left heel, wherever that is for you. And now please notice or imagine or become aware of, feel or sense the distance or space between the center of the earth and the center of your left heel. Good. And as you are aware of this space between the center of the earth and the center of your left heel, I'm amplifying these earth frequencies up through your left heel, and through the rest of your body. However you imagine or are aware of that, or even just know that it's happening, is great. You might just feel more relaxed, maybe even a little sleepy. And on your next inhale, bringing your breath, attention, focus, awareness into your right hip. Becoming aware of the distance between the front of your right hip and the back of your right hip. For those of you more experienced, noticing the inside edge on both the front and the back and the space between it, and then the outer edge of the front and the back part of the right hip and the space between. Very minor difference, and yet vast at the same time. There we go. Yeah. And then whenever your next inhale becomes available to you, bringing your breath, attention, focus, awareness to your right heel. Noticing the texture of whatever it's touching. Good. And then whenever you're ready, becoming aware of or imagining the space between the very center of the earth, the very center of your right heel. Yeah. Good. And now, bringing your attention to your heart space in the center of your chest and your nipple line, putting a hand or a finger on this spot. Please ask yourself the following question. How can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? For those of you who are new, that question again is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And as you ask that question, whether you're aware of it or not, your higher self responds to that question by quickening your own frequency resonance. So it's like you're taking a running jump. I'm just going to catch you on the top end of your jump and pull you higher. So as many of you know, how high your frequency resonance is dictates everything from what your reality looks like, how you feel about it, how much acceleration you can have, how much distortion you can release. this is one of the most important things we do together. Here we go. Good. Bringing or keeping your attention in that heart space, and then bringing your attention right into the xiphoid process, which is at the base of your sternum. Your sternum is that big, thick bone in the center of your chest where your ribs meet in front of your body. If you trace that bone from the hollow of your throat all the way to the base of it, the bottom of it, and it becomes flesh, it's a little tender if you press on it, that's your xiphoid process. Okay? So, heart space and right in the xiphoid process deep inside the body. Okay. So what we're going to release here, okay, you're all different, and the mastermind has different subgroups in it. Okay, so for a number of you, we're going to release expectation and story, like what you think the experience is going to be. Okay, because it takes you right out of the present moment, which is not where you can receive benefit. It puts you firmly in your mind, which is of a much lower frequency resonance, not accelerating. Okay? And story is not just your story, it's other people's stories of this space. For another subgroup of you, okay, we're just going to release this low self-worth, non-deserving. It's almost like you're judging yourself and how you're doing, meaning if you succeed or you fail, do you access something, do you not? Do you derive importance from being able to access something? All that stuff. Okay, we're pulling that out. Again, all of that pulls you into your mind, into your ego mind. It does not keep you in the resonance of the present moment in linear time, right now, without expectation. So, pulling this out. Yeah, and for a very small subgroup of you. Okay. So you have a hard time holding your space generally, okay, whether it's with people or with circumstance. So when you go into a sacred set, you just like suck up like other people's stuff that they've been releasing. All right? I'm just going to like pull that out of you so you can learn to hold your space better. Okay. There we go. Mm-hmm. Really nice. Yep. And now please become aware of what I would call your high heart. Okay, so between the heart space, the center of your chest and your nipple line, and the hollow of your throat, so the midpoint between those two spaces. You put a hand here or a finger here. Mm-hmm. And right at the midpoint at the back of your neck, along your spine. So just releasing some of these control patterns. So again, expectation can cause us to want a certain outcome, a certain thing to happen. We can want a certain experience. So I'm just going to release that. And right behind this, the best way I can describe this distortion, it's a desire for that sight to do something for us. It's like, okay, I'm in this mystical space. Do your thing. Okay. Alrighty. We're going to release that. Okay, because it's like you're pushing into the space of the sight. I know that sounds strange because it's not like a human. Okay, but whether it's a whale, a sacred size, whatever, to be respectful is to hold your space, not push your frequency resonance in it. And just stay in the center of you. And then whatever happens, happens. Okay? So, all right, we're releasing this pushing of frequencies into the space. And sort of like this demand, like, all right, well, I'm here now. Do your magic. Right? Let's release that. And there's a small subgroup here where it's like you'll go into over humility. It's like, I'm not worthy of this space. I'm not worthy of the gift of this space. I'm not, like, it's better than me in some way. It's not better than you. It's not. So I'm just going to release this. It's like, I'm not worthy of receiving whatever the space can give me. Okay, no. Let's release that. Just disempowers you, diminishes who you are. Not helpful. There we go. Good. Becoming aware of a brilliance from deep within that starts to expand out through the center of the heart space, radiating out in all directions. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Good. Still deep in the center of the heart. So, what I'm doing here is anchoring you deeper into the heart space so that you're more aware of, or feel, or sense, or know when you're in a space that's special in terms of its higher frequency resonance, right? You don't have to feel it. You can just know it. You can just be aware, like, oh, something different and good here. Don't need to know why. You don't need to, like, all that stuff is a story. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Good. Yes. Yep. Good. Bring your attention into that neck, into the spaces between the vertebrae. and in the heart space. Okay, hang on. So I'm just gonna, this will just amplify things. Okay. In terms of if you're in a space where the frequency resonance is high and is beneficial to you, it will accelerate you. So just helping you, okay? Just facilitating. Here we go. Really keep your focus here. How aware can you be of your body? Of the space between the vertebrae in your neck? Yep. So, for a very small subgroup, actually, okay, now this, it may not apply to you, so just be aware. So, for a very small subgroup, keeping your attention in the neck space and keeping your attention in the heart, this is fear. Okay, so it's like you don't trust yourself. Okay, so you're more afraid when you go into these spaces. Right? You're just like, oh, maybe it'll hurt me or drop my frequency resonance or it'll be polluted or what, like a lot of thinking. Okay, so we're just going to release this fear pattern. If you're present, aware of your body, in the present moment, trusting your response in the moment, not your mind, your response, like, oh, I don't feel good here. Uh-oh, right? You just move out of the space. That's all. Okay? So it's not like it has to be a big crisis. It's just being aware of your response in that moment. It's like you're being aware in response to a person, except it's not a person, it's a space. Right? You're not going to like, if someone is just not being very nice to you or mean, why would you stay around? But you don't have to be afraid of them. They're just there, right? So same with the sacred site, okay? So just releasing this fear space. I mean, the fear distortion pattern, excuse me. And the lack of trust in self. Okay? So you can drop further into neutrality. And into the present moment. Really nice. There we go. Okay, we're going to make a little tiny adjustment right in the midpoint of your solar plexus. For you, just come more into the 0 point. All right, so this is another refinement. This is a nuance. Okay. For a number of you, your minds will override what it is that you know, sense, feel, are aware of as true for you. Mine will be like, no, that can't be right. I mean, I read on the internet that this was clearly a good thing. All right, so we're just going to release the mind, okay? Because it's not, to really have the benefit of a sacred site, you are, like I said, entering a mastermind with it. You're co-creating with it. It's really can be a beautiful thing. So let's release this mind piece here. So you can just go a little deeper into the 0. allowing yourself to sink into, dissolve into, melt into the very center of your solar plexus, which is between your belly button and the base of your sternum. Good. Yeah. Huh. And if you bring your attention to your heart space for just a moment, I'm just going to amplify just so you know what it is. Okay? I'm just going to amplify the clarity of the resonance of Mount Shasta, actually. So just being aware of your heart space. Now, this is simply something for you to become familiar with. So all of them will have different flavors, okay? But it's like in training you to something that's very high in resonance. There we go. Yeah. Really lovely. Bring your attention now, please, to that xiphoid process at the base of the sternum, and about 3 inches or 7 centimeters directly beneath it in a straight line down towards the belly button. Clearing out and resetting the pain body, because your pain body has a memory of you before frequency work was done, which makes your integration slower, at least from what I've noticed. So just clearing this out, resetting it. Good. Everyone take a nice deep breath in. Hold it for a second or two. Releasing with some sound. You can stay in this space or blink your eyes open, looking at something inanimate. Whew. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next YouTube Live. Bye for now.